welcome back to a new video. My name is Jade Shinyu and I help people reclaim back their power physically, mentally and spiritually. Now today we're going to be talking about a really interesting topic, to be honest, and that's about the Fae and fairy spirits, nature spirits. So a lot of people instantly will think, oh, what a joke, when they hear fairies, because obviously Hollywood and mainstream media has portrayed fairies to be, you know, cute little pixies that sprinkle fairy dust on you, make you fly. But that's not true. So the Fae and fairies are actually not what people think. They are quite the opposite, to be honest. So the term Fae or fairy is like an umbrella term. So there's actually many different types of nature spirits and fairies that fits into that label, that category. So of all shapes and sizes. So they are not just like little humanoid, you know, pixies, basically, that go around with wings and, you know, granting wishes. They don't do that. So I actually got inspired to make this video because of a recent client of mine. I have two clients that I've been helping through quite a tough time in regards to black magic, curses, bad luck, and that sort of thing. And it was really interesting because with my homemade deck of cards that I have to determine which entities or curses or demons that someone may have affecting them, when I was doing them a reading, the Fae cards came out, so the fairy cards came out. So I was like, that's very rare for that card to pop out. And basically I said to them, you know, what sort of, you know, place do you live on? Like, do you have a lot of trees around you? Like, is the land quite old, ancient? And basically they have a really big, beautiful house in the countryside in Canada, surrounded by really old, ancient trees. And some of these trees are like 200-300 years old. So a really beautiful place that they live. However, I did say to them, I asked them, have you done anything, you know, to the land that you think may have like angered a nature spirit, a fairy? Basically, have you cut down any trees or like done anything, you know, that may have been seen as disrespectful? And it was very interesting because they said, yes, they did. When they first moved into the property about 15 years ago, they'd done a lot of renovation works, and unfortunately to build what they wanted to build, they had to cut down 2 ancient trees, so 2 really old trees. And another interesting thing that happened was their neighbour who had lived there a while warned them, do not cut down any old trees, like don't cut down the trees. But unfortunately they didn't listen, and they did. And these are 2 really lovely people, by the way, but they thought it would be fine as there's like a lot of trees on their property. But since they'd done that, they had severe bad luck to this day for 15 years since they moved into that house and cut down the trees. I mean, they've got other things going on as well, but it's like things really got worse and amplified once they done that. So basically what happens there is they obviously pissed off the fairy spirits. They pissed off the Fae. They pissed off the nature spirits that were connected and living on that land. With the Fae, they're not what people think. So they're not just like little pixies hiding in trees and shit. They're very similar to like aliens in a way, where they are interdimensional beings. However, they are connected to the earth. So they are interdimensional beings of earth. That's what they are. However, some people do believe that they have portals, so they can come in and out as they please. And this could explain a lot of sightings that people have. I myself have seen some really convincing videos of, you know, old videos before like Photoshop and that sort of thing was like common. CGI, you know, all that sort of thing. Like some really convincing videos of like cryptids, little goblins, fairies, you know, nature creatures. The sort of places to find these types of spirits is untouched wilds, like forests, lands, jungles, but mainly forests. And a lot of Wiccans, pagans, you know, they will do a lot of nature, elemental, you know, witchcraft and that sort of thing. And there are a particular group of witches who do actually directly work with the Fae. It is quite a common practice. But and it's a big but, is not to be taken lightly, because when working with nature spirits, you have to be extremely knowledgeable and respectful, because they're not angels, okay? They're not angels, and they can be extremely naughty. They can be really dangerous if you piss them off. If they just don't like you, because in general the Fae dislike humans, and I don't blame them, to be honest. A lot of humans who are like connected to the Fae will have similar morals and feelings to them. So if you're naturally someone who obviously adores nature, like most natural witches, shamans are, you will probably naturally be connected to them. But you still have to be careful, because they can be very dark, and not all of them are good. So there are ones who are quite dark, but most of them dislike or fear humans because of what they obviously do to the earth. They cut down trees, you know, they throw litter everywhere. You know, they're just very disrespectful when it comes to their lands. So fairies can basically give curses. So it's kind of similar to what happens when people ruin like ancient Egyptian temples, tombs. Like a fairy's ancient tree, if disrespected, like cut down, or like a forest that they're heavily connected to or where they live, it's very similar to like the ancient Egyptians, like pyramids, tombs, you know, ruins, all that sort of thing. So if you go and like cut down a tree, or you disrespect the land, even taking something from that land as well, they can curse you. They can basically give a fairy curse, and that can be pretty severe, even leads to like illness, like a lot of bad things, to be honest. So you have to be very careful what you do in those sort of lands. Otherwise, yeah, a lot of dark shit can happen. There's even certain forests in Scotland that I know of, because Scotland is obviously part of the UK, but like it's a lot more wild than England. However, the more up north you go, and especially to like the Scotland Highlands, there are a lot of there's a lot of land that still feels very much alive. This is why a lot of occultists go and lived in Scotland. Even Aleister Crowley had a house there. Obviously, I don't like him, but obviously he was, you know, a very intelligent occultist. Unfortunately done a lot of dark magic, but he knew that the land in Scotland was very powerful, certain areas of it, because it still had that energy that was alive. It wasn't dead. So it basically means that the veil is very thin between our world and their world, the astral world. So it makes it a lot easier to connect to interdimensional beings, to manifest, to conjure things, especially entities. So that's why people will go to certain lands like that still have that ancient sort of energy. It's like it's still switched on, if that makes sense. Especially certain places, you know, temples, ruins like Stonehenge, Glastonbury in England is a very switched on, powerful place. It's kind of like a portal within itself. But there's also a lot of places in Scotland that are like that also, and Ireland. So America is especially filled with many places like that. In their forests, so many people go missing. It's like laughable how many people just vanish without a trace. There's a YouTuber actually like called Mr. Ballin. He actually done a huge, like so many videos on stories of people like disappearing without a trace or getting abducted by really strange sounding creatures and things, you know, including children that will vanish for a few days and then like miraculously appear again. So there's a lot of strange things that happen that the police and investigators just could not explain. A lot of people do believe that these creatures are to blame. Like I said earlier, they can come in and out of our plane of existence. So if you see certain things such as trees with eyes are a big giveaway. So there's certain things that are like, you know, got traces of like fairy magic, if you want to, you know, call it that, or clues where a portal could be. So one of them is trees with eyes. So it's a particular type of tree, or very, very old ancient trees always act as like a portal key, if that makes sense, to their world. So people can actually go there astrally. So if you're someone who can astral project, I know people who are very good at astral projecting will know certain portals on Earth, such as Stonehenge, the pyramids, and certain trees, etc., where they can go astrally with their astral body, their energy body, and then they go into a different dimension. And there's so many places you can go. So, but on our land, there's also things where you'll see like rings. So a big giveaway of like fairies and the fae being near you or in the forest is seeing rings on the land, in the grass. So if you see a fairy ring of like darker patches of grass that makes like a circle, or flowers or mushrooms, they always say do not go, like don't step in it. Don't step in the middle of the ring, stay away from it, because it can cause bad luck, it can piss them off, as they see that as being very disrespectful. Another thing you should never do is obviously litter, abuse nature. Don't go around throwing stones or rocks at trees. You know, just common sense basically. Like if you go into an ancient old forest, or if you live on old lands, just be very respectful, and obviously to animals as well. So there's certain things that you can do to kind of befriend them, because a lot of witches will actually befriend these nature spirits and ask them to protect their house. So even if you have pissed them off, you may be able to like make up with them. But the only thing with nature spirits and the fae is they're not very loyal. So if someone else came along, I mean, some can be, but in general, they're very much like, they will just do things for people who give them like the best rewards, the best payment. So everything they do is for payment basically. So this is why people will give offerings, so such as sweet things. They will bake them cookies, treats, give them shiny things. So it's kind of like people giving offerings to their ancestors. You know, you see that a lot in like Bali and India, that sort of thing, where they'll offer them like food and incense. A lot of people, especially pagans and Wiccans, will do the same, but with the fae, nature spirits. Now I have this book called The Exorcist's Handbook. It's a really good read, but it's more advanced though, as it requires basically a lot of like inner vision work. But she basically goes to explain certain entities and beings that you can encounter. Obviously if you work as like a healer or an exorcist, helping people with curses and possession. So what she says under fairy beings is basically they are like, she's quite eccentric by the way. So she calls them as being, you know, great fun, sarcastically. They are like working with maniac depressive pickpocketers. They can cause all sorts of problems for us, but often they do not realize the effect of their actions. So you need to tread very carefully and compassionately with these beings that are wonderful expressions of nature. So basically the best way to deal with a fairy is to bribe them. Like I was saying before, they will do a lot if you bribe them with something that they want. So such as offerings and, you know, sweet treats, jewellery, shiny things, you know, anything like that. But like I said earlier, there are many, many different types. And I remember as a child, me and my sister would actually see them quite a lot. So if you're someone who's like naturally gifted, if you're like a natural witch or shaman, or you just had a very open third eye as a kid, which a lot of children do have, you probably would have seen them without even realizing. You know, a lot of the time people will just think, oh, it's an imaginary friend, when it's not, because obviously when you're a child, your pineal gland is extremely clear, it's very active, it's very open and clean before it gets calcified as you grow up and eat shit foods, drink fluorides and all that sort of thing. It gets naturally shut down. So when I was a kid with my sister, we was like go and literally play with them. We would see like balls of light, sometimes in our room, and we'd always call them fairies, by the way. We had this neighbour that literally had like a very magical garden, and we would always be extremely excited to go to her garden because we just intuitively knew that there was like beings that lived there. And it's really annoying because I can't remember exactly what was happening, but I remember just the excitement and joy, and definitely seeing a lot of things in her garden. However, I've also seen like scary looking ones, and quite interestingly, I actually saw one about 2 years ago in this forest where I used to live nearby. And it was quite a big entity. So like I was saying before, they're not all just tiny little things, they can be quite big creatures as well. So the time where the Fae will come out and kind of like expose themselves a lot will be springtime. So around this time now, if you live in the Western world. So springtime is when they become more active. It's quite rare to see them in winter, because spring is obviously when nature comes alive, you know, they love it. So I remember walking my dog in this forest, and I made friends with this tree. So basically I found this really nice tree that I was drawn to, and this is when I started to intuitively and intently work with nature spirits for the first time as being an adult. So I started leaving cookies and offerings at this particular tree. So I'd done that about 3 times, and then I remember one day walking, and it was in spring, and I just saw in like the corner of my eye this huge white looking creature like zoom past me, and it was so close, literally like right here, but its back was like this high, and it was on like all 4s. So it kind of looked like a polar bear but with no fur. Really unusual, but I didn't really see its face, but I just saw it was like quite hunched over, it had no fur, it looked quite sort of skinny-ish but muscular at the same time. So I had no idea what it was, but I saw it as clear as day, and then it just zoomed past me, and then it disappeared. My first thought was like, oh my god, it was like a huge dog, but obviously it couldn't have been because its back was that high, and it just disappeared into nothingness. So yeah, quite a lot of interesting things have happened like that. And a really interesting thing happened when I basically kept going to this particular tree. This was like confirmation for me that they 100% are real and exist. So I remember going to this tree, and the 3rd time I went there to give a cookie, because I was baking vegan cookies, I just would leave one there. And basically I found this stone next to the tree, which it was literally just a plain white stone. Unfortunately, I don't have it with me because I left it at my old house because my sister is living there now. Because I invited them to look after that house in particular, so I thought I'll leave it there just in case. But basically it was a stone, and on it was painted a red heart, and then in gold lettering it said love. So it was such a weird thing to find like in the middle of nowhere next to the tree that I kept giving offerings. It was so strange, like it was shocking really, and I was just like, what the hell? So in my eyes I thought, okay, that's like a gift that they've left me. And because remember, it's like a portal, it acts as a portal key. So yeah, and then after that I saw that entity. I also had a very unusual dream. So at the property that I was living in at the time, because I was going through a lot of psychic attack back then, I actually was working on trying to get their help to help protect me, etc. Which I do think they did help a lot, but because they're nature spirits, they can only do so much. So if you are really battling like, you know, a dark demonic spirit, they probably won't be able to do much, bless them. So, but they can offer protection from like other negative nature spirits, and sometimes people trying to hex you, that sort of thing, you know, lesser black magic. So again, it really all depends, because there's like hierarchies, just like with angelic demonic spirits, there's always ones that are like weaker and stronger. So it really depends what ones you connect with. So when it comes to fairy curses, there are actually 2 types. So kind of similar to when obviously satanic people will normally use or conjure like demonic entities to like go and attack someone. With Wiccans or people who do like nature hearth magic, they can actually conjure fairies to go and curse someone, to attack them. So this is a kind of lesser curse though. So if it is a human, a Wiccan, I mean, normally Wiccans shouldn't do this because they should obey the law of like harm no one. You know, basically don't do bad magic, but sometimes it happens. So if someone is using or conjuring a fairy nature spirit to go and hurt someone, it's normally not as severe. However, as said in this book, if it is a fairy curse that has been casted by a fairy, like I was saying before, that's when it's dangerous. That's when you're in deep shit because you have directly angered them. And this can be a lot more tricky to heal. And a lot of the times the people will actually end up having to move house. They'll actually have to leave entirely to escape them. So this is actually what my clients at the minute are like on the brink about. They're actually getting to that point where, because the energy is so severe in the house and the lands, they actually may have to move. So sometimes it can't be reversed if you really have angered a fairy nature spirit, because they're not angelic, they're not very forgiving. It's not guarantees that you'll be forgiven and can, like, you know, get their basically forgiveness. But you can always try. So basically you can be extremely respectful towards them. If you suspect something like that might have happened, giving them offerings, you know, really looking after your garden. There's so many books that you can get on like actual fairy magic and that sort of thing, you know, what you can do to make them happy, certain flowers that they like, certain herbs that they like, making your garden as beautiful as possible, really nurturing the plants, nurturing the animals, even feeding animals that will come to your gardens, like birds, squirrels, you know, depending where you live. Just being highly loving and respectful to nature, because that is what the fairies are all about. They despise anyone going against that. So anyone who is abusive towards animals or the environment, they will despise you. So I'll leave it there, my loves. If you suspect that you may have pissed off a fairy, then I do offer one-to-one oracle card reading, spiritual advice. So if you are worried that you may have a fairy curse on you, or you want to know more about it, or if you have any other problems or issues to do with relationships, career, just general healing, then I am here to help you. I do still have my spring sale on, so as always, I'll link that down below in the description box. I also have my Patreon page, so if you want to learn more and see more of my uncensored, more conspiracy videos that I am not allowed to post on YouTube, then go check that out. That's also down below in the description box. I actually did post a video about a few days ago that unfortunately did get taken down and deleted by YouTube, but I have reposted that on my Goddess Coven Patreon, so it is now up there for you to watch if you want to. So until next time, my loves, be nice to the trees and I will see you next time. Like, subscribe, and don't forget to click the notification bell down below so you don't miss any of my future uploads. And until next time, I'm sending you so much love, so much light. Ahimsa.